I'm shaking. I don't want to be here. I have to move. I'm posting this a couple of days behind, so my apologies if these things feel a little off timeline. If I go silent for a while, please let Evelyn or my mum know what's happening. Or contact the police. I'm from, and I run, truck and trailer repair. My name is Jeremiah, but I go by Jay. Mum, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything, and I hope you can forgive me for whatever happens next. I never meant for any of this to get out of hand. I'm checking into a motel. If anyone's reading this and I don't make another post soon, just know something's not right here. And I don't think I have much time left. I have to go back. I know it. Yesterday, I woke up on the cold tile floor of my kitchen. Empty beer cans and bottles scattered like the remnants of a failed attempt to forget. My throat was numb. But the first thing I noticed wasn't the usual staleness of spilled beer. It was the smell. It clawed at my senses. Rancid, foul, like something had been left to rot in the walls for weeks. This wasn't just the remnants of a bender. It was something else. Something worse. The kind of smell that gets under your skin and stays there. I sat up, rubbing my face, trying to shake off the disorientation, but it clung to me like the stench. The air felt thick, heavy, with the odour that wasn't there the night before. It made me gag as I tried to piece together the events of the last few hours. I remember Evelyn leaving, slamming the door, and that damn box she forgot again. Then, nothing. Just a blur of alcohol. Maybe a couple of half-hearted attempts at forgetting how screwed up things had gotten. But the smell, that smell, was new. The pounding in my head was relentless. But it wasn't just from the hangover. There was something else. Something more pressing, gnawing at the back of my mind, and that uneasy feeling I'd been trying to drown out for days. It was louder now, sharper, like the house itself was trying to tell me something. I glanced around, half expecting to find some explanation for the stench. Maybe something in the trash, maybe something I'd forgotten. But the kitchen was as clean as it ever got. The smell wasn't coming from here. It was coming from elsewhere, from deeper in the building, maybe from the store. And it hit me again. The door, the one with the chain and lock. I was strung about as high as a piano wire when my eyes started to focus. Still half in a daze from the night before. My head was pounding, and my mouth felt like I had chewed on sandpaper. As I blinked, something immediately felt off. The kitchen cabinet door was wide open, just hanging there. And the door, the one I was damn sure I'd closed and locked, was cracked open, chain still holding it shut. I stared at it for a moment, trying to process what I was seeing through the fog in my brain. At first, I chalked it up to the draft again. Maybe the wind had pushed it open, slipped through some gap and just nudged it enough to mess with me. Nope. Something about the way that door was sitting, slightly ajar, but the chain still holding it closed, didn't add up to me. But again, like a fool, I brushed it off. I knew what I was going to do as soon as my mind came to. No hesitation. Just that early morning clarity that comes when you've been thinking too much about something. I dragged myself up, barely feeling the soreness in my limbs, and threw on whatever was closest. An old jacket, my Carolinas, and my dad's old hat. I hopped into my old truck, a rusty, temperamental thing that rattles and sputters like it's barely hanging on, and handles like a boat, and headed towards the shop. It was still dark out, the kind of early morning where the sky's more navy than black, and everything feels cold and quiet. Blue, dark, hunting weather. Just me and the sound of the engine humming through the silence. I went through my usual morning putter, like muscle memory at this point. Nothing but the occasional bump in the road and the early sunrise creeping over the horizon to break the stillness. And of course, Todd, the homeless guy that made a Facebook page for but still leave out in the cold. Weird town. I stopped like I always do, at the shop across from where all my family's buried. Everyone I know just calls it the graveyard. Just part of my routine, as sacred as the sun coming up. There's 2 C's and an S I run on in the morning. Coffee, cigarettes, and a Slim Jim. Been that way since I was about 12. Yes, cigarettes included. I grabbed my usual from the gas station. Coffee strong enough to strip paint. A pack of Marlboro Reds. And that Slim Jim that's probably been on the rack longer than it should be. But hell, who cares? The damn things are like cockroaches. They'd survive a nuclear holocaust. I drove to the shop and unlocked everything. The old familiar creak of the door greeting me. Daddy's name flickered on the LED light outside. A kind of silent signature he left behind in the world. He passed away about a year ago, and when he did, I was the only one of his kids who he knew would keep the place running. Out of all of us, I was the one who really paid attention. The one who showed up. The one he could put his faith in. The one who found him on the floor with the torch still on, staring blankly into nothing. The one to carry on his name. I think he always knew it too. Whenever he demonstrated something with a truck or give us a lesson, or make us hold the flashlight and ask for a 10mm socket, only to smack us in the head for bringing him a drill, his gaze would often settle on me, as if he were passing down not just skills, but a piece of himself. I needed him now more than I ever have. I could almost hear his voice in my head, telling me to quit pussyfooting around and focus on the job and worry about work. Then later, he'd probably come over, take a look at the door himself, or maybe he'd track down Shane and give him an arse whooping. Then again, there was the third option. One that I hoped he wouldn't have to say, but I know he would. He'd tell me to pack up, move out immediately, and come back home. But I couldn't do that. I have to be here by myself. That's just how it is. He knew that. Hell, Evelyn does too. I only had about 4 orders come in. A few PTO shafts needing built and some bad bushings and a torque rod that needed pressing, even though the guy left them outside for the elements. Dumbass. It was nothing I couldn't handle in a couple of hours, so I had time. Plus, Esteban was already in the parking lot when I got there, so I told him I was just picking up a grinder and heading home. I asked him to call me if he needed anything, like a job quote or any other urgent matter, so I wasn't too concerned about leaving the shop. It's been just me and Esteban since Dad passed, so I figure he can handle it. We're a small shop and the business is slow but steady, and I'm only a town over anyway. I loaded up the air compressor and grinder, then headed back home. The door was calling to me louder than any shop task ever could. I was itching to find out what was behind it, more than I cared about the daily grind of running the shop. I entered the stairway to my apartment from the street and was immediately hit by the overwhelming stench. The smell was so intense, it practically seeped out from the hallway and into the street. It was a nauseating mixture of rot and decay that made me want to turn around, to flee back to the safety of the street, to ignore the gnawing dread that was clawing at my insides. The street seemed to whisper, urging me to go back, to find solace in the shop, or even to spend a night on the sofa in Dad's old office. Anything but venture further into this abyss. As I slowly climbed the stairs, each step felt like a mile, my stomach heaving as I fought the urge to gag. The smell grew stronger with every step, a vile presence that seemed to cling to the walls and choke the air. When I finally pushed open the door to my apartment, the scene that greeted me was one of chilling unease. Shane was in my house. I took a deep breath and forced myself to walk further into the apartment. Shane, taking a knee in the corner of my living room by the vent, was busy changing out air filters. The smell of decay mixed with the sterile scent of cleaning supplies. Shane, morning, Jay. Didn't expect you to be back so soon. He glanced up, his eyes cold and calculating. He had the screws from the vent in his hands. Me. Shane, what are you doing here? I clutched the compressor and grinder tightly in my hands. Shane, just taking care of some maintenance. Air filters can get pretty clogged up, especially in a place like this. What's with the tools? He asked, almost glaring blankly. Me. These? Oh, they broke. I was going to tinker with them a little today. He continued working with a deliberate nonchalance, as if this were the most mundane task in the world. Me. You know, you didn't need to come all this way for that. I can handle it. It's just air filters. Shane, oh, trust me, I know you can. I'm just making sure everything's in order. How's work at the shop? Busy? Me. It's fine, we're managing. Shane. Good to hear. The silence between us rang out. It was like we both had something to say, but didn't want to. It was odd. Shane broke the silence, looking downward, then back up to me, almost like he was figuring out how to be human. And Evelyn, how's she? I know things were a bit rough before. His eyebrows raised over his glasses and his forehead shifted upward, moving his face almost bare scalp back towards his crown. Me. Evelyn's gone. She's moved on. She's been by, collecting her things on and off. Shane's eyes narrowed slightly, but he quickly masked it with a smile. Shane. I see. Well, good luck with everything. Just a piece of advice before I go. He straightened up, wiped his hands clean, and gave me a slow, almost predatory smile as he stood, towering over me. Shane, you really shouldn't have messed with that door, Jay. Some things are better left alone. With that, he turned and walked out, leaving me standing there, grinder and air compressor in hand, feeling more unsettled than ever. The door? My thoughts immediately went back to it, now feeling more ominous than ever. What the actual fuck? I dropped my tools, the clang of metal on tile barely registering over the pounding in my ears. He knew. Shit. He knew. But how? I didn't tell him. I hadn't told anyone. The only people who knew were me and Evelyn, and she sure as hell hadn't been talking to Shane. My mind raced, trying to piece together the implications of what he had said. That smile. The way he looked at me. Like he already knew every move I'd made. Every step I'd taken toward that damn door. I stepped towards the door and peered through the peephole. The fisheye view distorted everything, but I could still make out Shane's hulking figure as he walked down the hallway. He didn't rush, didn't hurry, just casually made his way toward the building's exit. Like this was just another day for him. Like he hadn't just completely upended my sense of safety in my own fucking apartment. As he stepped out onto the sidewalk, something hit me. When I pulled in, I didn't see his van. I'd been so preoccupied with that smell, with the tools in my hands, that I hadn't even noticed it was missing. Creepy bastard. He must have hidden the car somewhere I wouldn't notice. He'd planned this out. He wanted me to know he could come and go as he pleased. Whether I saw him or not, I watched him until he disappeared around the corner, heading towards somewhere. Probably the back alley or some side street. Waiting for me to let my guard down, I held my breath for a few moments longer, making sure he was really gone. Then I turned, locking the door behind me. Not that it would do much good. He had a key. The realization hit me hard, settling in my chest like a weight. No lock, no deadbolt, no chain would stop him if he wanted to come back in. I was sitting in a cage, and he was the one holding the keys. But I wasn't going to just sit there and wait for him to make his next move. Still, the fact that Shane had been in my apartment without me knowing, that he'd been up close, screwing with my air filters, walking around like he owned the place, that was too much. I glanced back at the door again, the one that had been haunting me, the one he had warned me not to mess with. My skin crawled. He knew I'd opened it. He must have been watching. But how long had he been waiting to confront me? How long had he known that I was starting to poke around? My heart pounded, and the air felt too thick to breathe. I waited a few minutes, listening to the silence settle around me before I plugged everything in. The air compressor whining to life. The grinder buzzing in my hand with the press of the handle. But before I got to work, I double-checked the door. Locked. Not that it would matter. Shane had a key. But I wanted something, anything, to slow him down. I glanced toward the kitchen, the smell of stale beer and rot still hanging thick in the air. My eyes drifted to the cabinet under the sink, the place I'd been wanting to avoid but couldn't. The hidden door. As I opened the cabinet, a piece of paper fluttered out and my heart nearly stopped. It wasn't a note though. It was a photograph, taped to the inside of the cabinet door. The picture was of Evelyn and me, walking down the street, right out front of the apartment. Our backs turned to the camera like someone had been watching us from a distance, but it wasn't the photo that made me freeze. Scrawled across it in thick red Sharpie was the word, "Don't." The message was clear, and my pulse raced as I stared at the door beneath the sink, really knowing I was in over my head. But whatever was behind that door, it was calling to me. I closed my eyes, bit the inside of my lip, and from the black, I heard the buzz of the grinder hitting steel. Then the sparks flew. I opened my eyes and focused on the link I'd started on. No safety glasses like a dumbass. My dad would be proud. He never wore them. And he never wore a welding helmet. He was a stare directly into the arc kind of guy. Never knew how he did that shit. I got through the first link, then I felt something. Not physical, but of my own primal DNA. Something we all feel and can't explain. The feeling of being watched by something that's hunting you. I knew that feeling from hunting cougar with my dad. I was looking down and away from the door. The grinder's blade was spitting metal shards back at me as I was cutting, so I was adjusting the blade. And although I felt what I felt, I didn't let it bother me. I pulled out my flashlight from my pocket and shined it towards the grinder. When I did, I noticed the smell getting stronger and a liquid oozing from the door. I traced the source back towards the door. Then I saw it. Through the crack, right in front of my face, a human-sized but deformed eye, jaundiced in colour and blue in the iris, with a pupil that narrowed from the light. It was connected to a mass of indiscernible pale flesh and was staring at me from inside the door. It was a face, one that looked familiar, but I couldn't place it. My face went flush and my heart jumped from my chest as my hands trembled in fear. Fuck! Who are you? What are you? I leapt back and fell from the cabinet. It turned back from the door. Then I heard it. The fucking scraping. The sound I've heard for 2 years. The sound I brushed off as wind. It's always been here with me. Just unknown. The liquid, I believe, was urine. It pissed on me. Or they pissed on me? I don't know. I don't want to know. It left me with one word. One deep, almost gasping, disembodied utterance of a word. Mother. I haven't posted in a few days. Things have gotten weird really fast, and after everything I've seen, I'm questioning reality. I definitely need therapy, but just know I'm safe. I'm a few days behind where I left off. Evelyn's coming by tonight, but I can't stop thinking. What the fuck did it mean by mother? What was it? Why did it smell like that? How long had it been watching me? And why the hell did it piss on me? All these questions raced through my mind as I sat with my back to the cabinet door, barricading it with my body. I was chain-smoking cigarettes and shaking uncontrollably. The creature's eye. Its eye was human, but the body. No fucking way. The voice. It was so familiar, like I'd heard it before. Its face. It looked familiar. Should I call Shane? How would that convo go? Hey man, so I need every cent I've paid you back. You never mentioned the ungodly creature in the walls, and I think I'm moving. Yeah, that would go well. The writing on the picture told me everything I needed to know. Don't. What a cheap warning. At this point, in a horror movie, the protagonist would usually run and come back later. But I've already smoked about 10 cigarettes sitting here, and the adrenaline had almost subsided. I thought about asking Evelyn to crawl through the hole when she came by. She always was nosy. And if she didn't come back out, well, 2 birds, right? I laughed darkly to myself at the thought. Maybe I really was losing it. But then I figured, fuck it. I'm going to see just what the hell is in my apartment's walls. And I'm killing it. Not my best idea. But, you know, alcohol. I stood up, still jittery, and walked over to the nightstand by my bed. The picture of Evelyn stared back at me. Her once loving expression, now almost mocking. I opened the drawer and pulled out my dad's old .357. I checked the cylinder. Just 1 bullet. Same as I'd left it. I often contemplated using it on, well, you know. But That, and much like the amount of bullets in the gun, to me, was simply not enough. I loaded the rest of the chambers. Armed and barely sane, I walked back to the kitchen, staring at the cabinet that concealed the door. This was it. I opened the cabinet door and peered into the black. Nothing. No sounds, no creature. Just that rancid smell, thick in the air. It clung to the walls like rot. Grabbing my grinder and the chain, I got back to work. The metal screeched as I cut through the last bit of the chain link. It snapped with a dull clink, and the door creaked open. Sliding through something wet, the smell hit me even harder, like a punch to the gut. Shit, what the hell? The floor behind the door was caked in shit. I said a prayer and asked myself, am I a plumber or a welder? Why am I about to climb through this? My questions went unanswered. I dropped down on my hands and knees and crawled through the door and into the filth, the fecal matter smooshing under my palms and knees and oozing a liquid that seeped into both like clay mud. The space was cramped. The walls close and decorated with childish drawings, rainbows and clouds, all crudely sketched on the walls, stained by grime like a nightmare version of a kid's playroom. Toys were scattered around, half buried in filth, some visibly chewed on. I felt a lump rise in my throat. What kind of fucked up room was this? What the hell was it for? Then the smell. It was overpowering. The thick, acrid stench burned my nose and throat, and my stomach started to churn. Before I could stop myself, I was vomiting. The mess splattered onto the floor, adding another layer of foulness to the room. I tried to pull myself away, but the space was too tight. I ended up crawling through it, through my own vomit. The sticky, acidic bile soaked into my sleeves and shirt, clinging to me like moths to the lantern. My hands were trembling, but I kept crawling forward, shining my flashlight into the darkness. As I moved, something caught the beam. Something across the room. A small box. It was covered in grime, but there was a faint gleam, like it hadn't been touched in years. I pivoted my torso towards it and shifted my legs, then began to crawl. As I approached, I got up on my knees, with my head tilted downward to avoid hitting my head. I wiped the dirt off and opened the box. Inside were old, yellowed, and filthy photographs, pictures of Shane as a kid. I recognized him immediately, his height towering in each. Each photo was dated, labelled by year, with names scrawled in shaky handwriting. Shane, Christmas 1977. Shane, Easter 1976. Shane, Mother's Day 1978. I flipped through more photos, pictures of Shane's mother. Her name was written on the back of one. Evelyn, 1980. My stomach twisted. Fucking hell, that's why. Before I could make sense of that, my heart sunk further as I found something else. Pictures of the creature. It was dressed exactly like Shane in those childhood photos, mimicking the same outfits. But its face, it was melted, like a bad imitation of Shane. Then I saw a photo of both of them together. Shane and Simon, Christmas 1977. Simon, his brother. My blood ran cold as I flipped through more pictures, seeing images of my apartment before it was my apartment, when it was their home. The doors brightly coloured, the room like a child's nursery, the creature, or Simon, Shane's nursery, or Simon, Shane's mother hugging both Shane and Simon, the way a mother hugs her babies. I wanted to throw up again. The poor, poor thing. He's been locked away in here for years. Why? Why would Shane lock his brother away? Where was Simon now? Why isn't he in his room? And then I looked around the room. I saw it, and it hit me. There was an air vent. The vent. A 3-foot by 3-foot air vent, directly across the room from the door. That's how he's been getting around. No fucking way was I crawling through that. But again, I thought of Evelyn. She was small enough. Maybe she could. I inched closer to the vent and saw a light from around the corner. But before I could react, I heard it. A soft, wet shuffle. From the darkness, I saw him. Feral, crawling silently toward me, his body twisted and deformed. A misshapen head sloped off by his right ear, his eyes misaligned, one facing forward, the other one on the side of his head like a nightmare version of a Picasso painting. His skull was fused to his left shoulder, a grotesque hunch connected to a vascular arm while his right arm dangled uselessly, ending in 3 malformed fingers. He had no neck, and his pale skin clung to his ribs, sickly thin. His torso ended and met with only 1 malformed foot. He was naked, covered in filth, and crawling toward me with a growl that sent chills down my spine.
Mother.
He snarled.
Where's Mother?
His face looked like Shane's, and his voice sounded like Shane's. But it was shrunk, like a child's. I panicked. My hands slipped on the slick floor as I scrambled to back up, my knees catching on toys and debris. I could barely move in the cramped space, and the more I struggled, the closer he got. His breath was hot and rancid, like decay, and his growling grew louder, more desperate. I kicked out, trying to push myself through the door, my hands clawing at the floor, slick with the filth and vomit. I could hear him behind me, gaining on me, the soft slap of his malformed hand against the floor. I threw myself backward, my heart pounding, my body trembling with fear and adrenaline. I was halfway out, almost there, when I felt something grip my ankle, a cold, strong hand. I kicked hard, my foot connecting with something soft. I felt a jerk that pulled me inward, then the sharp pain of something biting at my leg. I kicked again, and then I was free, crawling back into the kitchen, slamming the cabinet door shut behind me. I sat there, gasping for breath, drenched in sweat, filth, and fear. Then I heard what could only be described as a child's soft cries. Simon was still in there, and I had no idea what he was going to do next. I peed at my leg. The bastard bit down at the fat of my right leg just above my Achilles. I was bleeding like a stuck pig and sweating like you wouldn't believe. Then I heard the sounds of Simon moving back through the vent, still crying.
Bring the Mother.
I've never cried that hard in my life. Not out of fear, but sorrow. Guilt. What kind of fucked up person lets their disabled brother rot away behind a door? How has he survived? And what the fuck did he do to their mother? I opened the junk drawer to the left and grabbed my bag of zip ties and some gauze. First, I zip tied the cabinets shut, and then I took a shot. Then I poured some whiskey on the bite, covered it in gauze, and wrapped it in electrician's tape, the dad way. After I threw up my clothes, I took a shower, packed a bag of clothes and beer, and went down to my truck. I drove around for about 4 hours, mostly in circles. I never left town. I found myself at the Motel 6 by the truck stop, and I've checked in. I've been here for about 5 days. I still don't know what to do, who to call. Who would believe me, Evelyn? Fuck. Why would I have wrapped her into this? Why did I? Why? I called her, acting like I was reminding her of the box she left, but it didn't take long for her to see through the facade. Me. Hey, I'm surprised you answered me. Evelyn. I figured you were drunk. And I was bored. Thought it might be funny to hear you beg me to come back again. Me. Yeah, well, I'm not. I paused to take a breath. Me. Your dumbass left a box at my house and I just wanted to see if you'd pick it up. She was quiet for a while and then said, Liar. Your voice is awfully shaky. What's wrong? What's happened? Me. Nothing. Evelyn. Jay. Don't fucking lie to me. What's wrong? Me. You were right about the door. The silence was back and ringing in my ears a lot louder than before. Me. I'm in a lot of danger. Evelyn. What are you? Me. Shane's brother is behind the door, Ev. My words must have landed pretty harshly. Evelyn. What? Me. Shane's had his fucking brother locked up under my sink. Evelyn. What? How? I went into full detail. I told her everything I saw. How Shane left a warning. The lock. The chain. The filth. The room. The pictures. The cries of Simon. I could hear her gasp at a lot of the things I told her. She told me that she wanted to help me, but was terrified of the thought of crawling around in shit. Can't say I'd blame her. I figured I sounded crazy. She told me she'd call me in a few days and try to wrap her head around it all. She finally did. Once this mess is over, I might post again. Maybe I'll die and save everyone the headache. But as of right now, I'm sitting in this motel. I'm fucking terrified. And if Shane finds me, I'm a dead man.